Tuesday, 10:47 p.m. Security officers seize Dr. Amelia Richardson's arm and march her toward the exit of Metropolitan Trust Bank's marble lobby. Her navy blazer flashes under the crystal chandelier as bystanders pull out their phones. This is private property. Leave now, barks branch manager Marcus Webb, his voice echoing off the marble pillars. Outrage ripples through the crowd as cameras light up, capturing every moment of blatant racial bias. But Amelia doesn't panic. She tilts her head, meets Webb's snarling gaze, and utters 5 calm words that will ignite a corporate earthquake. In that instant, a routine dismissal explodes into a live-fire takeover that no one saw coming. Drop a comment if you've ever witnessed injustice. Subscribe and hit the bell. Part 1 kicks off our deep dive into the drama you won't want to miss. The doors of Metropolitan Trust Bank swung open on a crisp Tuesday afternoon, sunlight streaming in across the polished marble floor. Dr. Amelia Richardson stepped through her posture as steady as her Harvard MBA credentials. She carried no entourage, no announcement, just a leather briefcase and the quiet confidence of someone used to commanding boardrooms, not bank lobbies. Marcus Webb. The branch manager barely looked up from his mahogany desk. A fresh-faced 28-year-old MBA graduate, he saw Amelia's dark skin and designer blazer and made an instantaneous judgment. "Ma'am, you need to move to the back," he barked. "This is for premium customers only." Security officers handcuffed on rotation moved forward. Onlookers froze. Phones sprang alive. A dozen patrons started live streams, their viewers ballooning by the second. The tension crackled like static in the air. Amelia placed her briefcase on the desk, unzipped it with deliberate calm, and withdrew her Platinum American Express Centurion card. She let it glint under the chandelier before handing it to Webb. "I'm here for routine business," she said, voice level. "Seat 1A, please." He scoffed. "That must be a mistake." He tapped at his tablet. "Your records show an economy ticket. You have to go back there." Her face betrayed nothing. She unpeeled her boarding pass, nor her bank statement displaying her account number and status as majority shareholder and board chair. Yet Webb's lips curved in a patronizing smirk. "Anyone can forge cards," he sneered. He had no idea who he was insulting. In that moment, Amelia's gaze flicked to the smartphones trained on her. Live viewers soared past 10,000, the hashtag #banking, while black exploded across Twitter. She whispered to the nearest security guard, "One wrong move and I'll call corporate security." That was her first strategic strike. The second came as Webb summoned an assistant manager to verify her credentials. Phones recorded every glance of disbelief as the assistant's screen filled with Dr. Richardson's name, founder of this very bank, owner of 67% of its shares. Webb's confidence crumbled. He barked for security again, trying to regain control, but the cameras were already focused on him. His face flushed beads of sweat appearing on his brow. The lobby, once hushed, buzzed with whispers. "She owns this place." Amelia checked her watch. 2:50 p.m. 2 minutes until the regional vice president would arrive. She closed her briefcase, turned on her heel, and strode toward the marble front doors, her heels clicking like a metronome. Inbox alerts pinged on her phone. "Emergency board meeting, downtown branch." She paused, hand on the door. "Marcus Webb," she said over her shoulder, voice soft but carrying. "I suggest you join us upstairs." The doors closed behind her, and the cameras still rolling captured the last image of Webb hunched behind his desk, gaping at the empty space where he'd just tried to humiliate the bank's founder. In under 3 minutes, an everyday microaggression had become a viral flashpoint, setting the stage for a corporate showdown that would redefine what it means to fight injustice in real time. Stay tuned for Part 2. Authority meets defiance, where the regional VP storms in and the boardroom drama truly explodes. The clock on the marble wall ticked inexorably forward as the lobby of Metropolitan Trust Bank transformed into an impromptu theater of humiliation and resistance. In the midst of pin-drop silence, shattered only by the hum of smartphones recording every second, Dr. Amelia Richardson stood, her ground arms folded across her navy blazer. Marcus Webb's voice had lost its bravado. He cleared his throat for the 4th time, tapping furiously at his tablet screen, as though summoning some error-free proof of Amelia's alleged mistake. But the only proof the cameras and onlookers saw was a tableau of prejudice in motion, a young white branch manager abusing his authority to eject the bank's founder from her own institution. Live viewers had surged past 12,000 and were rising by the second. Comments scrolled like bullets across the screens. Why is this still happening? Call corporate. She owns this place. Webb jabbed a finger at Amelia. Ma'am, Amelia raised a single, perfectly manicured hand to still him. Her voice was low but carried effortlessly to the back of the room. Mr. Webb, you've made your point. Now, let us hear the truth. His face flushed. He fumbled for words, but the tablet betrayed him again. The system showed no record of any appointment or account under his flimsy criteria, yet he refused to concede. Meanwhile, a dozen cameras, 3 from customers, 4 from security cams, and an undetermined number streaming on social platforms had captured every micro-expression and hasty misstep. Time became a living thing in that space. Each tick of the clock echoed like a drumbeat. 2:51 p.m., 2:52 p.m. For Amelia, each second was fuel. She met each of Webb's barbings with an unflinching gaze. When he sneered that she was just another troublemaker, she allowed a faint, measured smile. That smile became as potent a weapon as any forensic document. Bystanders leaned in, whispering among themselves. Sarah Martinez, the Justice Watch streamer, moved her camera closer. Her voice hushed with urgency. Y'all see this? They're literally kicking the bank owner out. I can't breathe. A tremor of recognition pulsed through the crowd as someone in seat 3B murmured, She's the CEO. Another's phone beeped with a breaking news alert. Metropolitan Trust CEO faces discrimination live. At that instant, Amelia checked her watch again. 2 minutes. She had timed this perfectly. Without a flicker of hesitation, she reached into her purse and withdrew her phone, tapping a contact labeled Only HQ. The lobby seemed to hold its collective breath as the call connected. Upstairs in Conference Room A, the atmosphere was electric. Patricia Vance, the board chair, sprang from her seat the moment she saw Amelia's face flash across the screen. Bring her down! She barked, voice taut with urgency. Moments later, the elevator doors opened on the lobby floor. Webb turned to see a rush of board members, lawyers, and corporate security officers descending the staircase. His veneer of control shattered as he realized this was no ordinary escalation. He opened his mouth to speak, but his words died on his lips. Natalie Reyes, the ground supervisor summoned by Amelia's call, wove through the crowd, her tailored blazer brushing past marble columns. She placed a steadying hand on Webb's shoulder. Marcus, let's step aside, she said. Her voice was polite but carried unmistakable authority. We need to resolve this immediately. But Webb fought back. I'm in charge here, he spat. I decide who sits where. Natalie's eyes hardened. Not today. She turned her attention to Amelia. Dr. Richardson, I apologize. Your seat. Amelia cut her off with a nod. I appreciate that, Natalie, but I came here for routine business. Let's focus on that. In the sea of smartphones, Sarah's live stream exploded into over 15,000 concurrent viewers. Comments cascaded faster than any human could read. This is history. Board members are here. They can't ignore her now. 2 corporate security officers in crisp suits parted the crowd, opening a path for Amelia. She walked past Webb, her heels clicking like measured drum beats against marble. He could only watch helpless as she reclaimed the space he had tried to erase. At Webb's desk, Natalie found a soft leather folder, another board document that Marcus had overlooked. She handed it to Amelia, a stamped invitation to the board meeting that afternoon delivered personally to Webb's office. The document bore Amelia's name in bold, founder and majority shareholder, emergency session, 3:00 p.m. The hush in the room deepened into a tangible tension. Webb swallowed hard, his face drained of color. Customers and employees alike exchanged glances that blended disbelief with vindication. No one dared make a sound beyond the soft hum of devices capturing every fleeting moment. Amelia paused at the desk, turned slowly, and addressed the crowd. Her tone was both calm and commanding. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. I will see you in the boardroom at 3 p.m. sharp. She stepped through the open doors to the lobby, her entourage of board members fanning out behind her. As the doors closed, the onlookers let out a collective exhale, a release of months, years, perhaps lifetimes of frustration at systemic injustice. Webb sank into the nearest chair, clutching at the desk edge. Natalie leaned in, whispering, "I'll cover you, Marcus, but know this, you will explain yourself upstairs." Outside the frame of the cameras, Napoli's real-time world shifted in an instant. What had begun as a routine customer service dispute had escalated into a seismic shift in power. The corporate HQ above the lobby readied itself for a reckoning. On social media, the hashtag bank takeover surged. News outlets scrambled to cut together footage. Legal pundits weighed in, civil rights groups mobilized, and through it all, Amelia's image, poised, dignified, unbowed, became a symbol of resistance and reform. In the final seconds before the elevator doors closed, Amelia paused, looked back at the silent witness stand that was Webb's mahogany desk, and offered a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was an acknowledgement of the battle just won and the war that lay ahead. As ding echoed through the lobby, her serenity stood in stark contrast to the rippling chaos she left behind. The real-time clock ticked on, but for a moment time froze in the revelation that power could indeed be reclaimed, one decisive step at a time. And so with the world watching, Dr. Amelia Richardson ascended toward the boardroom. The next chapter would be written in a different arena, but the message was already clear. Injustice would no longer go unchallenged. The marble lobby of Metropolitan Trust Bank felt electrically charged, as if the cold stone itself knew it was about to bear witness to something extraordinary. Just moments ago, Dr. Amelia Richardson had reclaimed her rightful place, forcing branch manager Marcus Webb and his security team into a quivering retreat. Yet the room still thrummed with tension. Customers hovered in clusters, phones raised like lances, and security guards exchanged uneasy glances. In the growing hush, the snarl of bravery and panic intertwined. Then, almost without warning, the doors burst open. James Morrison barreled through with the stride of a man chasing salvation, his tailored suit flapping behind him, tie askew, and face flushed crimson. It was a sight so incongruous in the bank's tranquil opulence that every eye snapped to him. He skidded to a halt in front of Amelia, out of breath, still clutching a folder emblazoned with the bank's crest. "Dr. Richardson," he gasped, voice cracking with urgency. "I am so sorry. His apology hung in the air, raw and unpolished, but it carried the weight of genuine panic. He glanced at Webb, his superior, then at the wall of cameras recording every second. "I didn't know," he breathed, eyes wide. Webb's jaw dropped. The defiant spark he'd wielded only minutes before flickered and died. He stared at Morrison as if seeing a ghost, then at Amelia, whose composed gaze never wavered. The entire lobby seemed to tilt on its axis as authority shifted in a heartbeat from Webb's floundering edicts to Morrison's breathless contrition. Amelia's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. She had anticipated this moment, timed it even. Her ploy had been simple: allow Webb to overplay his hand, let social media and the live stream stoke the flames, then summon the only person whose arrival could truly break his momentum. And there he was. Morrison's voice steadied as he found his bearings. "Dr. Richardson," he managed, "I've just received word from corporate. There's no record of any directive to escort you out. In fact, you are the founder and majority shareholder." I came as soon as I could." He held out the folder. Amelia took it, flicking through the crisp pages that bore her name and signature: founder, board chair, majority owner. Her heart pounded, but she maintained her regal poise. She glanced up at Webb, then at Morrison. Webb opened his mouth to sputter an excuse, but no words came. He looked small and ant beneath the weight of his own error. Morrison turned to Webb, his expression hardening. "Marcus, what were you thinking?" His voice was low but thunderous, cutting through the buzzing hum of the lobby. "Did you really believe you had the authority to remove her, the woman who built this bank?" Webb swallowed. He had no answer. The customers, sensing the seismic shift, murmured among themselves. Phones continued to record, some zoomed in on Webb's pale face, others on Morrison's decisive stance, and many focused on Amelia, her posture serene yet unassailable. Morrison's apology had unlocked a new dynamic. He stepped aside, gesturing at Amelia. "Please, Dr. Richardson, shall we continue your business? I can clear the floor." Amelia nodded once curtly. She turned to Webb and security. "Mr. Webb, in 2 minutes we are convening a board meeting. I suggest you attend. You'll find it enlightening." Webb's hands trembled as he met her gaze. He nodded as if in a trance, then backed away toward the columns where corporate security officers had assembled. Morrison guided Amelia to the center of the lobby, creating a protective arc around her. The room exhaled collectively. The sprint of crisis had reached a turning point. The authority of the bank's real power had reasserted itself. Webb was no longer in control. The true chain of command had revealed itself. In that charged silence, Amelia addressed the crowd. Her voice was calm but resonant, carrying to every corner of the marble hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I apologize for the disruption. Please continue with your banking needs. I will be upstairs shortly." Her words were simple, but they rang like a bell of justice. Cameras clipped her every syllable. The live stream soared past 20,000 viewers as viewers realized what had happened, an executive-level upheaval captured in real time. A hush lingered as customers and staff absorbed the reversal. One by one, they lowered their phones and returned to their business, some wide-eyed, some with relieved smiles. A few applauded quietly, a restrained salute to Amelia's quiet command. Morrison stepped beside her, brimming with respect. "Dr. Richardson, I'll see to the boardroom preparations. Everything is in place." "Thank you, James," Amelia replied, offering him a nod of gratitude that seemed to soften the storm around them. Then, without looking back, she strode toward the grand staircase that led to the mezzanine where the boardroom awaited. Webb lingered at the base of the stairs, flanked by security officers who now wore expressions of sheepish regret. He caught Amelia's eye one last time, a silent plea for mercy, but she had no words for him now. The moment had passed. Above them, the digital departure board outside the bank's headquarters continued its indifferent rhythm, flashing traffic updates and local weather. But inside, the clock had stopped on business as usual. It had been replaced by something far more elemental, the triumphant reclamation of authority by its rightful holder. As Amelia ascended the stairs, the murmurs receded. The lobby returned to its typical low-level hum, though the tremors of what had just transpired would ripple through the institution for weeks to come. The branch manager who had underestimated her would be remembered not for his MBA or polished shoes, but for the moment he tried and spectacularly failed to deny a woman her own legacy. Outside phones connected to social platforms multiplied the moment. Tweets and live streams spread like wildfire. CEO storms in Reclaim's bank. Power Pivot founder versus branch manager. Metropolitan Trust meltdown. The hashtag #BankCEO takeover blazed across screens. On the staircase landing, Amelia paused briefly at the threshold of the boardroom. She straightened her blazer, smoothed her skirt, and inhaled deeply. The real work was about to begin, not just reclaiming her office, but reshaping the institution she had built. But before that, she would preside over the board meeting, waiting just beyond the doors, one where Marcus Webb's fate would be decided in full view of corporate governance and public scrutiny alike. Moments earlier, Webb had thought he held the power to eject her from her own bank. Now every eye in the lobby had witnessed the reversal. The authority figures had appeared not as distant enforcers, but as allies to justice. The crowd dispersed, but the message remained: no assumption of superiority, no misuse of authority would go unchallenged. And as the doors to the boardroom closed behind Amelia, the echoes of phones powering down keyboards clicking to silence and softly whispered conversations faded into anticipation. Upstairs, the board members shifted in their seats, ready to confront the fallout. Downstairs, the lobby had reclaimed its calm, but the undercurrent of change and the certainty of accountability flowed through every marble tile. In the unfolding drama of the Metropolitan Trust Bank, the authority figures had finally arrived, and with them the promise that true power belongs to those who wield it responsibly. The next chapter would be written with policy changes, personnel decisions, and public statements. But in that lobby, in those crucial 50 seconds, the story had been made, and it would resonate far beyond those walls. The elevator chimed softly, and the polished mahogany doors slid open to reveal one of Metropolitan Trust Bank's most hallowed chambers. The boardroom was a cathedral of corporate governance, 12 high-backed leather chairs encircling a gleaming oval table. Floor-to-ceiling windows presented a panoramic view of downtown, but every eye was fixed on the giant screen mounted at the far end. Sarah Martinez's live stream replayed every moment of the lobby confrontation in vivid high definition, the ticker beneath it scrolling with commentary and live viewer counts. Amelia Richardson paused just inside the doorway, allowing the tension to settle like a shroud. She wore the same navy blazer and understated Cartier watch she'd worn to the lobby, a uniform of quiet authority that spoke louder than any power suit. Her poisoned ivy green dress whispered of impeccable taste and lethal business acumen. In that moment, she was the epitome of composure. Behind her, trailing through the doorway, came James Morrison and Marcus Webb. Morrison looked like a man who'd run through a hurricane hair must tie loose, but his eyes were bright with purpose. Webb's white-knuckled grip on the railings betrayed a man who realized too late that he'd played the villain in someone else's story. Security personnel hovered discreetly at the edges, their presence a silent reminder that corporate crises sometimes require physical containment. Amelia stepped forward, the click of her heels punctuating the hush. Each board member's gaze sharpened, reflecting shock, curiosity, or vindication. Robert Sterling, the venerable chairman with silver hair and a penetrating gaze, sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable as he motioned for her to continue. Beside him sat Patricia Williams, the bank's only other black executive. She offered a curt nod of solidarity. The general counsel, Marcus Reed, tapped a pen idly. Every face in the room was a study in power privilege and the subtle politics that govern those forces. Amelia cleared her throat. The soft echo carried across the marble floor and settled into the hushed anticipation. "Good afternoon," she began, voice steady yet resonant. "I apologize for the unexpected entrance, but it seems this institution forgot one crucial fact: it belongs to me." Murmurs rippled around the table. Webb's eyes narrowed, mouth opening as if to argue, but silence pinned him down. Amelia unfolded her arms and continued. "You witnessed in the lobby what happens when assumptions override verification. A senior manager ordered my removal from my own bank. In doing so, he not only humiliated me, but exposed a systemic failure in our policies and culture. Now, I'd like to propose we spend the next 45 minutes ensuring nothing like that ever happens again." Sterling leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Dr. Richardson, if you would outline your proposals." She nodded and tapped the table. Instantly, the screen flickered from Sarah's live stream to a crisp slide deck titled The Amelia Protocol: Zero Tolerance for Bias. The first slide was a stark chart showing the bank's last fiscal year, 147 discrimination complaints, a 38% increase over the previous year. "These numbers," Amelia said, "are not mere statistics. They represent customers we failed." The next slide listed Webb's actions step by step: unauthorized ejection, failure to verify credentials, public shaming. A murmured gasp swept the room at the precision of the timeline. Discretion. Amelia continued, is a privilege, not an excuse. When discretion falters, accountability must follow. Sterling cleared his throat. "Your point is well taken. But what corrective measures do you propose?" Amelia's eyes met his. "First, immediate personnel actions." She clicked and a new slide appeared. Termination of branch manager and security supervisor, their names in crisp black type. Reed shifted in his chair, the general counsel's jaw set. Second, Amelia said, mandatory bias recognition training for all customer-facing staff delivered within 30 days. She didn't pause for applause. The board was too rapt. Third, an anonymous reporting system managed by an external third party live within 60 days. Fourth, monthly diversity audits presented directly to the board. The room absorbed each point like a sponge. Fifth, she clicked again, link all executive compensation to measurable improvements in equality metrics. Until we can demonstrate real cultural change, bonuses will be withheld. Patricia Williams exhaled, then nodded. Bold but necessary. Sterling rubbed his chin. Are these demands within our capacity? Amelia allowed a faint smile. When you see a hurricane approaching, you don't argue about bandwidth, you secure the shutters. Metropolitan Trust has the resources. Now let us deploy them. For the first time, tension drained from the boardroom. Heads nodded in agreement. Patricia raised her hand. I would second all motions. Sterling's stern visage softened into a satisfied grin. Then it is settled. We will adopt the Amelia Protocol today. We will issue a public statement and move with the urgency this situation demands. He pressed a button on his remote. The screens behind them shifted to a draft press release acknowledging the incident and announcing policy reforms. Amelia stepped back, letting the room breathe. "Thank you," she said simply. Then she turned to Webb, who still lurked by the doorway. "Mr. Webb, please gather your things. We can discuss your next steps in HR." Webb's face crumpled as reality set in. Security escorts moved in to guide him out. He offered Amelia a stammered apology, but her eyes were ice. "Actions speak louder than words," she said before he was led away. As the boardroom doors closed behind them, a low hum of conversation rose, a symphony of corporate realignment. In the glass reflection, Amelia saw herself standing tall among Titan's founder, majority shareholder, and now the architect of a new era for Metropolitan Trust Bank. Moments later, the door opened once more as the head of communications entered. "Dr. Richardson, the media is assembling downstairs. They'll want a statement." Amelia nodded, checking her watch. "Then let's give them hope." She strode to the head of the table, raised her chin, and spoke with the authority that had been denied her only minutes before. "Today we choose dignity over division. We choose respect over prejudice. Metropolitan Trust will lead by example because banking without bias is not optional. It is mandatory." That single declaration reverberated through the room and beyond. In that boardroom, in those decisive moments, the bank's fate had been rewritten. The cameras in the lobby recorded the closing credits of Marcus Webb's tenure. The screens in the boardroom broadcast the opening act of systemic reform. And outside the city continued its pulse, now carrying the heartbeat of a bank reborn. For Dr. Amelia Richardson, this was far more than a confrontation or a corporate coup. It was the moment she transformed humiliation into systemic change and wrote the next chapter of her legacy in bold, decisive strokes. The boardroom had beckoned, and she had answered with power, precision, and purpose. Metropolitan Trust Bank would never be the same. The moment the slide deck shifted to live social media feeds, silence fell over the boardroom like a sudden blackout in a theater. On the giant screen, Sarah Martinez's original live stream titled "Banking While Black" had exploded from 15,000 to 47,000 viewers in seconds. Viewer counts ticked upward in real time, each increment a pixel in the portrait of public outrage. Below the live video, a stream of tweets scrolled relentlessly at "Banking While Black," #Met Trust Fail, "Dignity in Banking." Some showed outrage, others admiration, but all demanded attention. Amelia stood at the head of the table, her figure a beacon against the flickering lights of the screens. As she gestured toward the footage, her voice carried across the room with measured clarity. If you ever wondered why bias training is mandatory or why transparency is non-negotiable, watch closely. She watched as the video paused on Marcus Webb's smug expression the moment he dismissed her presence as a troublemaker. There was no need to point out the racism. The board members had already seen it. Instead, Amelia let the footage speak. A murmur rose when Webb's challenge rang out. "You don't belong here." Even behind the protective glass of the boardroom, the sting of that line resonated. Amelia kept her tone calm but authoritative. "That statement alone cost us thousands of dollars in the market," she said, sliding to the next scene, the live stream chat exploding with messages of solidarity. "Every one of those viewers is a potential customer. Every viral clip chips away at our reputation." The legal counsel's pen stilled. The chief financial officer leaned forward, absorbing the social media analytics flashing beside the video. Atlantic Trust stock had already dipped 2.3% since the stream went viral. The numbers told the story better than any memo could. The bank's brand equity was bleeding in real time. Amelia clicked her remote, and the live stream morphed into a chart of real-time engagement peaks at the 2:58 mark when security hesitated, a plateau as Marcus paused to make his coded phone call, a crescendo when James Morrison arrived breathless, the recognition flooding his face. Every beat, Amelia explained, is a lesson in corporate vulnerability. We are not immune to public scrutiny, and ignoring it is no longer an option. The chairman, Robert Sterling, scrubbed his fingers over his temples. He cast a quick glance at Amelia, then at the blank expression on Webb's face, and back to the screen. "It's worse than I thought," he murmured. Amelia met his gaze. Worse than any internal audit would have shown. This was a live case study of systemic failure. She paused, allowing the weight of that statement to sink in. Then with quiet assurance she continued. But every crisis also presents an opportunity. We can seize control of our narrative, or we can watch it slip through our fingers. Across the table, the head of communications, Laura Kim, leaned forward. "We need to own this story," she said, voice tight. "Not just with press releases, but with real-time engagement. We should go live ourselves, address the public directly." Amelia nodded. "I agree. Let's invite Sarah's stream into our official channels. Let's make her our first witness in this reform, acknowledge her courage for documenting injustice." She tapped the remote again, and the screen split on one side, Sarah's original stream on the other, a draft of the bank's official apology drafted in real time by the communications team. The apology was concise, direct, and unflinching. "We apologize to Dr. Amelia Richardson and to all customers who have experienced prejudice at Metropolitan Trust Bank. Effective immediately, we are implementing the Amelia Protocol to ensure dignity and respect for every customer." Silence reigned for a heartbeat before applause rippled around the boardroom. The energy shifted, transformed from shock to resolve. Sterling cleared his throat, looking to Patricia Williams. "This is the kind of leadership we've lacked," he admitted. "It's raw, it's public, but it's real." Amelia clicked the remote once more. The screens now displayed a timeline press conference at 10 a.m. CEO interview on major networks by noon, a dedicated section on the bank's website for real-time progress updates. "We will move faster than any scandal can unfold. By the time our statement hits the wires, we'll already have personnel actions underway. Training sessions scheduled, reporting systems live." The general counsel, Marcus Reed, rubbed his chin. "Public statements usually take days or weeks to craft. This is unprecedented." Amelia allowed herself a small smile. "We don't have days. We have hours. And if we act decisively, we lead the narrative rather than chase it." From the side of the room came a new player, Marcus Thompson, the local blogger whose 40,000 follower account had first brought public attention to the incident. He'd been invited to observe as a guest. Now he spoke up. "Dr. Richardson, this level of transparency is rare. But the world is watching. They don't want polished PR. They want honesty." Amelia gestured toward him. "Thank you, Marcus. Your platform and your integrity in reporting are invaluable. We'll link to your coverage directly. Our reform will ride the same waves that exposed our failure." Thompson nodded gravely. "Then let me report it as it happens. No spin, just facts." Laura Kim reached for her phone, already drafting social posts. "Follow at Met Trust updates here. #Amelia Protocol in action. Live reform, no filters." The board members watched as likes and retweets began to tick up within the draft preview. Sterling tapped a pen on the table. "Let's ensure we're not just reactive, but proactive. Community partnerships, town hall meetings, even local branches hosting open forums. We need to show, not just tell." Amelia turned back to the screen dedicated to network interviews. "I'll be live on all major morning shows. No dress rehearsals. I'll tell the story exactly as it unfolded and exactly as we intend to change it." Her words hung in the air as the boardroom erupted into focused discussion roles, assigned deadlines, set spokespeople briefed. The screens continued to broadcast Sarah's original footage in one corner, the apology in another, and real-time social metrics along the bottom. At last Sterling stood. "This meeting is adjourned. We leave here knowing two things. First, that we failed one of our most important stakeholders. And second, that we will not fail again. Dr. Richardson, thank you for leading us through this public reveal." Amelia inclined her head. "Thank you, Chairman. Now let's own our future." As the directors filed out, the screens in the lobby flickered to life for passers-by, broadcasting the apology and the promise of change. On the marble walls, digital posters updated from "Welcome to Metropolitan Trust Bank" to "Welcome to Metropolitan Trust Dignity in Banking." The court of public opinion had delivered its verdict. Now the bank's leadership would prove that actions are louder than headlines. Outside, the city's hum resumed, but Metropolitan Trust Bank had become a live case study in social accountability, its boardroom transformed into a command center of real-time reform. The public reveal had not only exposed failure, it had ignited the machinery of change. And for Amelia Richardson, the true work was only just beginning. By the time the board reconvened, a hush had settled over the mahogany chamber. Every executive cleared the residual tension from their throats, but no one spoke. Dr. Amelia Richardson stood at the head of the table with the confidence of someone who owned every inch of that room, because she did. The live feeds continued flickering on the wall behind her each window, showing a moment from the lobby confrontation, a reminder of why they had convened. Amelia took a breath, scanning the faces of the dozen directors. The general counsel, the PR chief, even Robert Sterling's stoic expression tempered now with something like respect. "Gentlemen and ladies," she began, her voice steady, "we have seen how assumptions and unchecked authority can fracture trust in an instant. We have witnessed how a routine customer interaction can become a crisis broadcast to thousands. Now we must do more than apologize. We must change." She clicked her remote and a slide appeared in bold letters, "The Amelia Protocol." The room leaned in the air electric. She did not read the bullet points. She painted pictures. First, she said each customer-facing employee will undergo mandatory bias recognition training within 48 hours. Not a webinar, not a perfunctory video. Live interactive sessions led by expert facilitators who know how to dismantle unconscious prejudice. We will measure completion rates daily, not quarterly. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. CDO Carmen Alvarez exchanged a glance with HR VP Maya Patel. They had debated training for months, but now Amelia's timeline was non-negotiable. Second, Amelia continued, "We will institute monthly diversity and inclusion audits for every branch. External auditors will have full access to branch performance metrics, complaint logs, and employee surveys. We will publish a summary report on our website so customers and regulators alike can see our progress in real time." Laura Kim. The communications chief nodded approvingly. "Transparency," Amelia said, "is the antidote to speculation." She watched as the CFO, Derek Lowe, scribbled notes on his tablet. Third, she went on, an independent third-party reporting system will be operational within 72 hours. Customers and employees can submit discrimination complaints directly to a neutral ombudsman. This system bypasses our internal hierarchy to ensure impartiality, and again we will publish regular updates on resolution timelines. Sterling glanced at General Counsel Marcus Reed, who swallowed before giving a subtle nod. The compliance team would need to scramble, but they could do it. Amelia paused, letting the weight of those reforms settle before delivering the coup de grace. She slid a folder across the table to Patricia Williams, the board's diversity champion. Finally, she said, "We extend a public apology to every customer who experienced disrespect under our watch. But more than words, we enact accountability at the executive level." Branch manager Marcus Webb. She let the name hang in the air, will face two options: immediate resignation with severance commensurate with company policy, or termination for cause, effective now with no benefits. A flicker of panic crossed Webb's face. He had been summoned from the lobby upstairs, his MBA pedigree now worthless. He opened his mouth and closed it. Amelia offered a calm, measured look. "The choice is yours," she said quietly. "But understand this, by choosing to resign, you save whatever remains of your reputation. By resisting, you force us to act more decisively than I believe any of us want." No one spoke. Even Webb seemed frozen. The general counsel placed a careful hand on his shoulder. Directors exchanged furtive glances. Amelia turned back to the board. "I trust you will support these measures. We must move as one." She raised her hand and looked directly at Sterling. "Chairman." Sterling inhaled and raised his hand in return. "I second the proposal." His voice, deep and authoritative, bounced off the walls. "Therefore, let it be resolved. The Amelia Protocol is adopted in full. The measures outlined shall commence immediately, and Marcus Webb's resignation is accepted." At that moment, Webb, pale and defeated, signed the resignation letter before him. He handed it to the general counsel, who stood and placed it in a sealed envelope. Amelia nodded once. "Thank you," she said softly. Then she addressed the entire room. "We will announce these decisions to the public within the hour. We will not wait for tomorrow's press cycle. We will lead the narrative now with action rather than explanation. Laura Kim jumped to her feet, already dialing her phone. Our social channels are prepped, press releases drafted, spokespeople briefed, she said, excitement breaking through. We'll live stream the announcement from our headquarters atrium at 3:00 p.m. Carmen Alvarez stood next. Training schedules are being finalized. We have room for up to 2,000 participants in the next 48 hours. Patel, the HR VP, added, We've contacted the audit firm. Our team will be on site at each branch within 24 hours. The compliance officer confirmed the third-party reporting portal's contract was signed and that the system could go live by the deadline. As the flurry of execution plans erupted around her, Amelia allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. This was no longer a theoretical framework. It was real-time reform born of crisis and driven by urgency. Sterling cleared his throat, drawing the room's attention. Dr. Richardson, your leadership today has not only averted a reputational disaster, but has set a new standard for corporate accountability. We are fortunate to have you at the helm. Amelia inclined her head politely. Thank you, Chairman. Our work starts now. Let's show our customers and our competitors what dignity in banking really means. With that, the room erupted into focused activity. Phones rang, assistants sprinted out, and the boardroom shifted from deliberation to action. The screens behind Amelia faded from the lobby footage to a single slide, "Action begins here." As the directors filed out, some to the press conference, others to training rollout meetings. Amelia took a moment to look at the empty chair Webb had vacated. It symbolized more than one man's downfall. It represented the gap created when prejudice is removed from power structures. And she knew that filling that gap would be just as important as enforcing any protocol. Outside the boardroom window, the city hummed on people moving between office towers, unaware that the banks of power had just been reshaped from within. But inside, a new tide of change was surging, driven by a woman who refused to be underestimated. The Amelia Protocol was no longer a concept. It was a mandate carved out in the crucible of public reveal and sealed by unanimous board approval. Now the challenge would be to deliver on those promises, to convert this moment of reckoning into a lasting legacy of respect and inclusion. And that she knew would be her greatest triumph. When Dr. Amelia Richardson walked back into the Metropolitan Trust Bank's downtown lobby, 45 minutes after she'd been unceremoniously dragged toward the exit, everything looked the same. Marble floors gleaming beneath the chandelier glass front teller windows, reflecting a Tuesday afternoon calm. But beneath that veneer of normalcy, a revolution had begun. As she stepped through the revolving doors, colored posters unfurled across the walls. Dignity in banking, respect for every customer, diversity is our strength. Digital monitors, once relegated to advertising interest rates and loan specials, now cycled through anti-discrimination pledges, customer service guarantees, and real-time updates on the new bias reporting system. The air hummed not with tension, but with purpose. She paused by the main desk where Maria Gonzalez, newly appointed branch manager, stood waiting. Several hours earlier, Gonzalez had been an assistant manager at a suburban branch. Today, she wore a crisp suit and the quiet confidence of someone who'd earned her promotion. As customers approached, she greeted them by name, regardless of their accent, attire, or account balance. One customer, an elderly Vietnamese woman clutching a small purse, held up her ATM receipt and smiled broadly as Gonzalez guided her to a private kiosk without a single hint of impatience. The sight warmed Richardson's heart. This was the culture she'd fought to create. Across the lobby, bank tellers wore lanyards inscribed with "I stand against bias." Their training badges, completed just hours ago, glinted in the afternoon light. Several new recruits hired in the wake of the board's decisions administered routine transactions with an attentiveness that bordered on reverence. When a young man in a hoodie approached to deposit a check, the teller didn't hesitate. She met him eye to eye, offered a friendly nod, and processed his request without a flicker of judgment. It was a simple exchange, but in the context of what had transpired, it felt revolutionary. Amid this symphony of change, the security station had transformed too. The guard who once flanked Dr. Richardson with suspicion now stood at ease, guiding customers to the lobby's information desk rather than scuttling them away. Above his post, a new digital ticker scrolled, "Updates 30 days until full policy rollout, monthly. Diversity audit underway. and first quarterly bias report. Published. These metrics, once hidden behind closed doors, now glowed for everyone to see. Richardson strolled toward the executive offices to check on the implementation of her namesake protocol, but she paused at the rows of plush leather chairs arranged for customers awaiting appointments. A bank representative, formerly a loan officer who'd weathered the upheaval of that viral incident, explained how each seating area would now feature cultural awareness materials in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, along with QR codes linking to short videos on respectful communication. Patrons could scan at their leisure, absorbing not interest rates but the bank's renewed commitment to inclusivity. As she reached her glass-walled office, her phone buzzed with an alert the bank's stock ticker on her home screen had ticked upward by 12% since the previous day's close. Investors were rewarding accountability. In the trading pits and investment bulletins across the globe, Metropolitan Trust was heralded not as a laggard, but as a trailblazer. Headlines proclaimed Bank of the People, when crisis breeds innovation and Metropolitan Trust's dignity dividend. Analysts speculated that the bank's customer base would swell by at least 18% over the next year, driven by an untapped market of underserved communities now feeling genuinely welcome. Back in the lobby, a twitchy television camera crew from a local news station was set up near one of the teller windows. The anchor, poised with a microphone emblazoned with the station's logo, turned to Gonzalez for a soundbite. Gonzalez smiled confidently and said, "Today, every person who walks through our doors can trust that Metropolitan Trust Bank values them not just as accounts or credit scores, but as individuals deserving of respect. This isn't a marketing slogan. It's our new standard." The broadcast cut to social media influencers who had been monitoring the live stream from 2 days earlier. One well-known community advocate, streaming from her smartphone, compared the bank's transformation to an underdog story. "We're witnessing history. This bank went from humiliating its owner to becoming the gold standard for inclusive service in less than 48 hours. That's leadership." In the hallway leading to the executive boardroom, Richardson encountered Lisa Chen, the assistant manager who'd been pulled into the initial confrontation. Chen's eyes brimmed with tears of relief, pride, and a newfound determination. "Dr. Richardson," she said, her voice wavering, "I never imagined I'd see the day when I'd help teach our staff to confront bias instead of enabling it." "Thank you." Richardson placed a gentle hand on Chen's shoulder. "You did the right thing by speaking up," she replied. "Now, we all have to keep doing right." Inside the boardroom, which now served as a headquarters command center, monitors displayed dashboards tracking bias report filings, training completion rates, and customer satisfaction surveys. Behind the mahogany table, Patricia Williams, the former board chair turned compliance overseer, reviewed the numbers in real time. Each line represented an opportunity for improvement or a failure to uphold the bank's vow. Williams looked up as Richardson entered and offered a brief approving smile. They had in only a few days transformed policy into practice. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, signaling the end of a whirlwind week, Richardson took one final walk through the lobby. She saw customers of all ages and backgrounds interacting. Parents opening college savings accounts, immigrants establishing new credit lines, small business owners negotiating loans. No one paid attention to how someone looked or what they wore. Their only concern was the bank's willingness to serve them fairly. Reporters crowded by the entrance pens and cameras poised as Richardson prepared to exit for a standing ovation-filled press conference at the City Hall steps. She had one last thought as she looked back. The walls remained the same. The chandeliers shone on the marble as they always had. But the spirit of Metropolitan Trust was forever altered. Prejudice had been exposed, dismantled, and replaced with protocols that promised accountability. In that moment, the bank's true transformation was clear. A shift from a fortress of privilege to a community pillar where every person, regardless of race, attire, or background, was afforded the dignity they deserved. And that she knew was the legacy that would endure long after the headlines faded and the stock ticker normalized a blueprint for institutional reform born from a moment of crisis and forged in the fires of real-time accountability. As the sun rose over financial districts from Tokyo to London to Sao Paulo, screens everywhere splashed the same headline: Amelia Richardson's live takeover sparks global banking reformation. News anchors spoke in clipped, urgent tones, replaying the moment security escorted branch manager Webb into the elevator, followed by the revelation that he was trampling his own majority shareholder. Media outlets ran side-by-side comparisons, the viral lobby footage alongside clips of regulators in Brussels and Washington announcing dignity and finance directives. Overnight, a single act of defiance had transcended local scandal to become a global mandate. In Frankfurt, the European Central Bank convened an emergency committee meeting. Senior officials scrolled through live tweets tagged Nat Banking, while Black and #Amelia Protocol. Their brows furrowed as they realized the tremors from that marble-floored lobby were unsettling more than just one institution. Within hours, a directive went out. All banks operating under Eurozone charter must submit diversity and bias audit reports within 30 days or face penalties. A once routine compliance memo was now footnoted with Amelia Richardson's name, a shorthand for decisive ethical leadership. Meanwhile, in New York, the Federal Reserve's Community Development Advisory Council, on which Richardson herself had recently been appointed, released draft guidelines mandating that every federally insured bank maintain a third-party bias reporting system, publish quarterly discrimination metrics, and implement unconscious bias training at every customer-facing level. Lawmakers on the House Financial Services Committee, inspired by the footage streaming from thousands of passenger and bystander phones, introduced companion legislation titled the Equality in Banking Act, aiming to enshrine real-time transparency as the regulatory norm. Across the Pacific, Japan's Financial Services Agency quietly dispatched inspectors to the nation's major private banks, armed with excerpts from Richardson's Amelia Protocol as a benchmark. Local press outlets ran feature stories headlined "When One Woman Changed the Rules," profiling how Tokyo's largest lender had already signaled intention to adopt monthly diversity scorecards and onboard a chief inclusion officer. The term Richardsonization began popping up in industry journals describing the rapid deployment of bias detection technologies and mandatory executive accountability measures. In Sydney, Australia's major banks announced partnerships with the newly formed Global Financial Equity Council, a consortium of institutions pledging to share best practices drawn from Metropolitan Trust's playbook. Their joint statement declared that any bank failing to adopt comprehensive bias training and transparent reporting by the end of the fiscal year would be subject to public censure and potential divestment by investment funds seeking socially responsible portfolios. Meanwhile, fintech startups saw opportunity in the wake of the Richardson effect. Venture capitalists poured funding into new apps designed to crowdsource real-time customer service ratings and flag discriminatory interactions, essentially the mobile equivalent of Sarah Martinez's live stream. One platform, FairPass, surged to the top of app stores within days, promising consumers the ability to scan any service receipt, banking, airline, hospitality, and instantly report treatment that deviated from established equity standards. Its founders cited Richardson's saga as the catalyst for consumer empowerment. Back at Metropolitan Trust's headquarters, Amelia Richardson watched these developments unfold on her office monitors. The same lobby cameras that had captured her initial humiliation flickered in a corner of her screen, now replaying edits of Sophie Gonzalez's new branch manager announcement and the stock ticker that had soared in the days following the takeover. A notification chimed the United Nations Principles for Responsible Banking team had reached out requesting a virtual keynote on institutional integrity in the digital age. Across the globe, her single statement of human dignity had become a manifesto for financial inclusion. In London's Canary Wharf, the chief executives of rival banks convened over breakfast at a private club. As they nursed their coffees, each CEO scrolled through the latest compliance mandates inspired by Richardson's actions. One senior banker murmured to his colleague, "We either move with this wave or we get left behind." A consensus formed in hushed tones. Genuine reform was no longer optional. The language of profits and losses had expanded to include ethics and equity. Even non-banking industries caught the ripple. At a global airline summit in Singapore, delegates attended a session titled "From Gate to Boardroom Lessons in Real-Time Accountability," where Richardson's takeover was cited alongside other watershed moments in corporate transparency. Speakers highlighted the shared mechanism, a live audience armed with smartphones and social media, that had forced institutional change. By the time the final panel adjourned, commitments were made to mirror banking's bias reporting requirements in aviation, hospitality, and retail sectors. As dusk fell, the Richardson Protocol took on a life of its own. Social media influencers continued to frame her story as proof that individual action could recalibrate entire systems. Legal scholars drafted white papers on shareholder activism at 30,000 feet, while business schools added case studies to their syllabi, ensuring that future executives would learn the Amelia Doctrine before their first board meeting. Some banks struggled to keep pace. In Latin America, a consortium of community banks banded together to share digital training modules built from Richardson's curriculum, overcoming resource gaps through collective investment. In Africa, microfinance institutions in Nairobi and Lagos began publishing gender and racial equity metrics alongside their traditional financial statements. The transaction was no longer simply about money. It was about trust, respect, and the right to belong. By night's end, the global web of reforms knit tighter still. Richardson's initial 5-word whisper, "You still don't know who I am," had reverberated across continents, morphing from a personal revelation into a universal call for dignity. The world's financial arteries pulsed with new protocols, guidelines, and technologies designed to intercept bias before it took root. What began as isolated humiliation in a marble lobby had blossomed into an era of systemic accountability. And as Amelia Richardson prepared for her next keynote this time at the World Economic Forum, one truth shone brighter than any spotlight. When power structures underestimate quiet authority, the backlash can reshape industries, rewrite regulations, and redefine the social contract one real-time revelation at a time. 2 years after that tense Tuesday afternoon when branch manager Webb tried to eject her from her own bank, Dr. Amelia Richardson walked through Metropolitan Trust's marble lobby with a quiet smile. The same floors that once echoed with security's heavy footsteps now gleamed under warm lighting adorned with banners proclaiming dignity in banking and digital kiosks displaying real-time equity metrics. Employees paused to greet her as she passed, some with respectful nods, others with genuine admiration. Customers from every background watched in recognition, aware that this once ordinary entrance had become the birthplace of systemic change. Behind her, the echoes of that viral showdown had long since faded into legend. Yet its impact resonated more powerfully than ever. Finance departments across the globe reported a 70% drop in bias complaints over the past 2 years. Regulators credited the Richardson effect, with forcing institutions to confront hidden prejudices, transforming reactive policies into proactive cultures. At Metropolitan Trust itself, monthly bias logs flashed green for consistency. Quarterly diversity audits celebrated sustained progress, and the third-party reporting system, once a radical idea, was now industry standard. Inside the 7th-floor atrium, a group of interns clustered around a holographic display. It visualized the bank's global equity dashboard, gender balance in senior roles, racial diversity in customer outreach teams, and customer satisfaction scores segmented by demographic. Each chart moved in real time, updating as new data streamed in. One intern tapped the screen, zooming in on a minor dip in a regional branch's bias incident rate. Within seconds, an automated alert recommended a targeted training session. A young woman whispered with awe, "It's like the bank's heartbeat, measuring dignity." In the boardroom above, the company's senior executives gathered for the annual Integrity Summit. The same mahogany table that once bore witness to Amelia's power play now supported strategic workshops on inclusive innovation. Industry partners dialed in from Tokyo, Cape Town, and Sao Paulo, sharing best practices cultivated under the umbrella of the Amelia Protocol. At the head of the table, Patricia Vance, no longer just a banker, but an outspoken champion of equitable leadership, opened the session with gratitude. 2 years ago, one woman's resolve exposed our blind spots, she began. Today we're here to deepen our commitment and ensure that dignity remains the foundation of our growth. Outside in the lobby's glass-walled cafe, journalists recorded interviews with employees whose careers had flourished since the reform. Maria Gonzalez, the branch manager who succeeded Webb, spoke passionately about how bias training had sharpened her team's empathy. "We no longer see policy as a burden," she said. "We see it as promise. A promise that every person who walks through these doors will be valued." Nearby, Rodriguez, the former security guard, now led orientation sessions on intervention and allyship, sharing stories of how a single hesitation to follow wrongful orders could avert systemic injustice. At a corner table, Dr. Richardson paused to help a young customer struggling with digital banking. With patient guidance, she showed him how to set up automatic alerts for any unusual account activity. His gratitude was palpable. "You've given me more than a banking app. You've given me confidence that the system works for me too," she replied simply. "That's what we built it for." By mid-afternoon, the lobby video wall switched to a rotating series of Amelia case studies business school-style vignettes, recounting each milestone of the crisis and reform. Students from top MBA programs watched live feeds dissecting the leadership lessons. One clip showed Patricia Vance's trembling admission of error, another highlighted the board's unanimous vote for the bias reporting system. Professors from Harvard and Wharton co-hosted virtual seminars debating stakeholder activism in real time and corporate accountability beyond profit. Case materials circulated in classrooms from London to Mumbai to Sydney, ensuring the Amelia Protocol's lessons would shape future executives. That evening, as sunlight filtered through the lobby's floor-to-ceiling windows, a special ceremony took place. Bank employees, community leaders, and customers gathered for the unveiling of a commemorative plaque reading, "In this lobby, Dr. Amelia Richardson taught us that dignity is fundamental. May her courage guide us always." Applause filled the hall as Richardson, flanked by Patricia Vance and her longtime ally, James Morrison, smiled and placed her hand on the polished metal. Flashbulbs popped. Smartphones recorded the moment for posterity. Across the city, state legislators cited the Metropolitan Trust transformation in new bills promoting transparency and anti-bias standards for all corporations. A coalition of civil rights organizations announced the Dignity League, pledging to monitor policy implementation nationwide. At the courthouse, a sign read, "In the spirit of Amelia Richardson, justice will be swift, transparent, and accessible." Legal clinics brimmed with pro bono volunteers helping individuals file discrimination claims under the updated guidelines. In her private office overlooking the skyline, Amelia reflected on the journey. Her phone buzzed with messages from activists in Nairobi planning local workshops, from airline executives in Sao Paulo seeking to adapt the bias reporting model, and from university deans requesting keynote addresses. On her desk lay letters from ordinary people. An airline passenger denied a seat. A rideshare driver refused service. A retail customer overlooked at a luxury store, thanking her for proving that no injustice was too small to challenge. As dusk turned to evening, she joined Patricia and James for a quiet dinner at the bank's rooftop garden. City lights twinkled below. The air carried the promise of possibility. They reminisced over modest plates of local cuisine, toasting not just to profits or stock prices, but to the intangible currency of respect and trust that had become Metropolitan Trust's most valuable assets. Before parting, James Morrison, once the stoic regional vice president, offered a heartfelt toast to the woman who reminded us that true leadership is measured by how we treat the least among us. Glasses clinked softly under the stars. In the weeks that followed, the Amelia effect continued to spread. Financial services conferences featured panels on the role of real-time documentation and systemic change through collective witness. Software developers released new analytics tools named Richardson Protocol modules. Even popular culture paid homage. A best-selling novel dramatized her story, and a documentary series spotlighted the ripple effects in sports, healthcare, and education. Yet Dr. Richardson remained grounded. She returned to Metropolitan Trust's lobby each morning, greeting security staff, baristas, and custodians by name. She knew that systemic reform was not a one-time victory, but an ongoing commitment. In every conversation, whether with a fellow CEO or a first-time customer, she reiterated a simple truth. Progress happens when we refuse to accept indignity, document injustice, and demand accountability. As part of her legacy initiative, she launched the Equity Fellowship, sponsoring young professionals of color to pursue leadership training in finance and public policy. The first cohort, diverse, ambitious, and deeply aware of the power of narrative, presented their proposals for further expanding bias prevention into emerging industries like blockchain finance and remote work platforms. On the second anniversary of her initial confrontation, a celebratory gala convened at the National Civil Rights Museum. There, Amelia delivered a keynote address titled "Quiet Power, Lasting Change." She spoke of the moment security tried to drag her out, not with anger, but with gratitude for that act unwittingly had revealed a broken system and set it on a path to repair. She urged the audience, "Our stories matter. Every recorded clip, every shared testimony, every boardroom demand, they accumulate into the unstoppable force of progress. Her words resonated as the gala's honorees, bankers, activists, lawyers, technologists rose to receive accolades for continuing the work she had ignited. The museum's curator unveiled an exhibit of the original streaming devices, security badges, and banking ledgers that had featured in her saga. Visitors stood in quiet reverence, tracing the arc from that single moment of discrimination to the global commitment to dignity. As the evening concluded, Dr. Richardson stood alone before the exhibit's final panel, which read, "Change begins when we challenge authority in real time. Justice is not static. It is crafted, documented, leveraged, and shared." She placed her hand gently on the glass eyes, reflecting both the past struggle and the future promise. 2 years ago, a branch manager's assumptions nearly erased her identity. Today, her legacy had reshaped an industry and sparked a movement. In that marble lobby, once a scene of prejudice, stood a testament to the truth that when quiet confidence meets unwavering principle, systemic injustice can indeed be dismantled, one powerful story at a time.